What's the most disturbing thing you know happened in real life that sounds like a horror movie?
Ronald Gene Simmons made his kids dig a big hole on his property. Then, as they got off the school bus for Christmas break, he killed them one by one and buried them in the big hole. 2 days later, when his adult children arrived, he killed them and their children. One of these babies was also his child, because he molested his daughter. He threw the adult children in the hole and the babies in the trunk of an old car. The next day, he went on a shooting rampage in the next town over and killed 2 more people. After he went to death row, the townsfolk burned his house to the ground. He died by capital punishment. Happened in the late 80s in my hometown.
I had older friends that rode four-wheelers to take care of their pet livestock. One day they noticed the horse was choking, so they went to help the horse. The horse and donkey both had rabies and attacked, literally biting through bones. My friends both died horrible deaths, one after a couple of days hospitalized, the other after weeks. I still get nauseous when it crosses my mind, and it has been years.
Elderly man was his wife's caretaker. She had dementia but is relatively functional, can still drive, etc., although she sometimes gets confused about where she's going. Kids live out of town and rotate calling every week. They finally realize no one has actually talked to dad in months, it's just mom answering the phone, who always says he's at the store, taking a nap or in the shower. They call someone to go check on dad. Dad had presumably died in his sleep many weeks, or months, ago, and mom just kept living life unaware, including sleeping in the same bed as his body every night. It was so bad the interior of the windows were solid black with flies and they had to use shovels to scoop his liquid remains off the bed and into a plastic bin as best they could.
Mario Uriosti, dumb kid who was jailed for shoplifting, was sent to the New Mexico State Penitentiary in 1980. He was originally placed in a cell block housing violent criminals where he was gang raped by 7 inmates. Mario had filed a lawsuit against his rapists, so prison officials had housed him in protective custody for his own protection. Then a huge riot occurred and a lot of the rioting prisoners took the opportunity to settle scores. Uriosti was one of the targets for revenge. His body was found hanged, with his throat cut and his dismembered genitals stuffed into his mouth. That was one of the most violent uprisings in U.S. penal history. More info herewith.
The Death of Sylvia Likens. I would strongly recommend avoiding reading it if you're faint-hearted. The gist is that her parents left her, and her sister, with another family to take care of them. That other family tortured Sylvia in increasingly heinous ways, including getting the boyfriends of 2 of the daughters to torture her by doing things like judo, throwing her into concrete, etc. There's a lot. It's an example of the depths of human depravity. The worst part is that her murderers were found guilty, but all of them got shortened sentences or were released on parole. The main culprit only served 14 years, and a couple of the ones involved only served 2 years. For everything they did to that girl. That's the punishment they received.
In 1985 there was a huge earthquake, 8.1, in Mexico City. My aunt, who has lived there all her life, was working when it happened. Luckily she and others were able to get out of the building. She mentioned a close friend of her told her she forgot her bag and she had to return for it. The building collapsed short after and she never saw her friend again. Also, a few years ago I was working in a hotel in Cancun. Made some great friends there, mostly chefs and waiters. One of the chefs was 35, and he told me they offered him the chance to work for the hotel in Japan, but he refused. When I asked him why, he told me that those ideas are for younger people. He didn't want to have the stress of learning a new language, being away from his family and starting from zero all over in a country so far from home. A year later, we both were not longer working in Cancun, but we kept talking every now and then. His final message was him saying, "Merry Christmas," to me. A few months later, all the waiters I had on FB started sharing his pic. He was kidnapped and to this day no one knows anything about him. I can only imagine that if these 2 people would have taken a different choice, they would still be alive.
Adolfo Constonso and his cult of human highlights include at least 27 ritualistic murders/human sacrifices, ritualistic torture and murder, including sodomy and castration, beheadings and removal of bones/organs to ritualistically sacrifice.
A minute ago I saw video of people falling from aircraft who were trying to escape from their own country. Nothing less than horror movie.
The guy whose jaw fell off due to drinking radiated water, that at the time was believed to be a medical tonic, as you could probably tell, radiated water didn't age well. I will warn you, there is a picture of the guy without his jaw, and I can assure it's not a nice looking picture.
I worked with this guy. He was real nice, but had his struggles. One day I noticed he wasn't at work, unlike him. Found out that the previous night he drove to the cemetery, doused himself in gasoline, and lit himself on fire. His girlfriend had somehow followed him there and tried, unsuccessfully, to help him, and got some serious burns as well. It was rough.
Some teenagers in a town I lived in kidnapped the owner of the local newspaper, did who knows what to him, and then buried him alive with nothing but a straw to breathe through. He died, and they went to jail.
They found his car in the lake. He was in the trunk. His dick had been cut off and put in his mouth. He had been shot 3 times.
There was a bus stop by my junior high where I would catch the bus to go home. In a house 20 feet away, there was a man kept in a garage being tortured, and eventually murdered. The owner of the house used to sit on the front steps and wave to us as we walked by. I only found out because years later I saw a documentary of the case. Blew my mind.
Lighting babies on fire because the Taliban thought the family was working with the Americans. Sauce. I was the one holding the baby when the dad brought him to me. Still alive. Beep.
From personal experience. Buddy of mine and I were hanging at his family condo up in the Ozarks. Throughout the day, we kept hearing bumps, footsteps, and scratching up in the attic. We thought it was rodents, so we checked it out. No rodents. Instead, we found a disheveled elderly woman up there. Turns out 2 days before we arrived, our next door neighbor locked his wife in his attic. She managed to tear and claw through to our attic, and she couldn't have been any younger than 70. How she did that, and without food or water, was something incredible, but my God, that was a horrifying sight to see in one's attic. Not to mention her husband's actions.
When I was in high school in a tiny Midwestern U.S. town, there was a guy who was the town cook. Wrote daily crazy letters to the local newspaper. I wrote for the paper my last 2 years of high school, and his house was covered in political rantings written in black marker. My friends who worked at the town grocery store said he came in every day to buy a giant bottle of rubbing alcohol and a bag of kitty litter. Turned out, his mom had died in her bed and he used the kitty litter and rubbing alcohol to kill the smell while living with her and cashing her social security checks for nearly 2 years.
Loud music and a lot of screaming from a house down the street one Saturday. Most people thought it was just teenage girls throwing a party, but one of the neighbors called the cops with a noise complaint. Turned out it started out as teen girls trying to throw a party and have fun. But some adult men had entered the party and were trying to rape the girls. I was younger then, so I don't remember if the men were let in by the owner of the house or if it was a home invasion. But it was a bunch of grown men trying to rape girls as young as 13.
The Toybox Killer, even worse than horror movies though. He kidnapped girls, played a record of him explaining how he is going to torture and rape them every day in a soundproof truck trailer, and had a mirror installed in the ceiling so the victims would see it all happen to them. His wife was in this beep too. I just can't understand how sick people can be at worst.
Why am I reading the comments? I should be going to sleep. RN.
Junko Furuta's story. Unfortunately, real justice was never served and the perpetrators walk free.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to subscribe to Upvote for the best quality content every day.